Meeting to order. I can see we have 6. We have a quorum today, and I'd like to know if there's a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam President, I motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. And we'll start this meeting by, well, I'd like to start it like I have been doing with good news. We might as well have some good news here. This past week we found out that Bear Exploration Center has been selected as one of the 3 national ACE Sustained Excellence Award winners for their continued participation in the Civil Air Patrol's ACE program since 2007. We have our elite runner, Jasmine Riley, has received a plaque and a $250 check that'll be presented to the school. She's currently ranked 6th in the nation in the 100-meter and 4th in the 200-meter events. And only the top sprinters are invited to this event, so we are quite proud of her. We had a 4th grader, and may not get this pronounced correctly, but Say Lakhimseti, a 4th grader at Forest Avenue School, who was in the top 500 students that participated in the Scripps National Spelling Bee. So real proud. Even though it's summertime, there are good things happening. We're going to move right on into receiving information on the proposed organizational chart.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Gillis is on her way down in just a second, so I'll go ahead and get started with it. So what we did was we went through it because of some changes due to some reductions in various places. We went through and tried to make our chart reflect those changes. I put in there at the top, we'll start with the Board of Education, the Superintendent, and General Counsel. Anything that's in sort of that orange is not filled. It's vacant at this time, and so that's why it's in that color. I added the Deputy Superintendent because I believe that a system this size with this many children and this many people should have, or employees I should say, should have a Deputy Superintendent to work hand in hand with the Superintendent. But that also is vacant, and I am not suggesting that we fill that right away. I'm suggesting that we have one eventually, but because of our reductions, I'm saying right now that's on hold. I feel comfortable with leaving that vacant because I've been a Deputy Superintendent, and so my brain works in both ways, so I can kind of shift back and forth as a deputy or as a superintendent, and it's not a problem. So right now we don't need to fill it, but I do think at some point in the future that deputy superintendent needs to be there. That dark blue area, for the most part, those were, in many cases, they were called chiefs, and so we've gone back to what the old chart might have said, the associate superintendent. There is no change in salary. For those people, the salary schedule is the same as it was before, but there is a change in the name of those people of that category. And then we've talked many times about needing to have supervision in our schools, and so some of those places where you see executive director, again, is orange, and so it is not filled. It is vacant at this time. So that is a category. Now we reduced in some categories because we no longer have principal leads in the schools, and so along with that that lack of having that area of principal leads, then there is a salary reduction in those areas also. The principal leads would have made a little bit more based on how they came in, but under this category there will be a reduction. It will depend on the degree and the experience of the persons who might go into those slots. Anything that you see in orange would have to be advertised, and so anyone who has an interest in any of those positions, even if some of those blue ones at some point become vacant, All of those jobs are advertised, and then those who qualify could apply for those positions and be considered along with anybody else. I know, and I'll just put this out there on the table, Ms. Gillis is here now, so I'll let her have it after I say this point. Anybody who is interested in those positions may apply. You know, it could be a principal somewhere, it could be a teacher who's certified to do whatever based on the job ad. Those people could apply, and they could be considered for any of those positions that are right now vacant. And at any point in time, someone could retire, resign, go away, and if we were doing a chart at the time, we might show it in orange, but that position is occupied right now, but they would have to apply and go through the same process that anyone else would have to go through to be considered. So it could be someone inside the organization, it could be someone outside of the organization that could apply for those positions, and we would do what we normally do, which is to interview and then make some decisions about those persons to fill those slots. Ms. Gillis, I just got started. I'm talking about the orange pieces where it's vacant, and I've also talked about the change in the name or for the leads, and that we don't have those anymore, and that there's a reduction in the salary, and also about the change in the titles from chiefs to associates, which is what we've had at some point in the past. And if you want to take it from there.
I think the only thing I would add is
Okay.
none of those positions can be filled, the ones that are vacant now.
Mm-hmm.
Until that, the first board would have to approve the organization chart. Then those positions would have to be posted, sit out for 14 days at a minimum, and then we could start. That's all.
Okay, and so we work with different ones within the organization at the chief's level, et cetera, to see what we thought would be a good way to go with these different changes in the org chart. At some point, I will ask you to approve the org chart. It simply is a map that gives you direction about where you need to go based on what I would say I, as superintendent, believe the organization needs, but also based on some reductions that we made and some changes that we made. And so this chart is a reflection of those changes. Questions, anyone? Any questions, anyone?
I'd like to know you said that there was, the salary, what is the difference in the salary from the principal leads to the executive director? And, just give me the range. I know that you depend on what person gets there. You have down here that the principal leads were making $115,000 a year, so what would the executive directors be making? What would be the range?
Well, the range, remember, it's gonna depend on their existing experience. It's gonna depend on their highest degree earned, if they have experience in that position. For example, if I've never been an executive director, so I would have no experience as an executive director, although I have experiences in other places. My experience still doesn't count toward that, so I feel the Lord. If I'm not mistaken, most of those jobs are in that range.
Not, so you could assure me not over 80, right?
No, I can't assure you not.
That's what I thought.
No.
I would actually have to go, and I can do that in just a second.
I would appreciate that, because that's real important.
Of the range of the executive director's salary schedule.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
It's kind of like, it's not a one size fits all salary schedule. Again, based on your experience, your degrees, et cetera, et cetera. That's what determines where you fall within that range.
And if we've been doing without them, why do we need them now? Especially since this is a RIF, I'm not understanding why we would be even looking at new positions in a RIF. I don't understand why we're hiring. I thought that's what we were doing, was trying to reduce. So did I miss something?
Okay, I think what's missing is that even though we're doing a RIF, we still have to run the organization.
But it's been being
And try
run
to-
without these. These executive directors, Superintendent Moore, are past. We're going back to, and all we're doing is shifting and renaming a position that you already have. So that's where the confusion is, at least on that.
Okay, I'll do my best to try to clear it up.
Okay,
Yes.
It's the beginning salary, or the lowest, we had some extras. So the beginning salary as of this experience would be $79,654. Then we had, the doctor. A doctorate is 12 years experience, at that, in that position would be 104,047.
104,047. Okay, well, let me just suggest that since this is a new, old position made up, that we start really low, like 79. We'd probably leave, we want to keep it, since we're trying to save money, why would we go to the six figures?
Well, I think you can't determine that because it would determine what the degree the person has. If someone has a master's, that's.
Well, some people are overqualified for a position, Kim, and if we don't need the overqualified, we need to save money.
Still some money because of what the policy says and what the State Department, the way that they actually give us money. I can't say because you have a doctorate done and you got a master's.
Well, personally, I don't think we need the position, but that's, you know, whatever.
Okay. She doesn't think we need the position. So let me elaborate a little bit on why at some point we do need these positions. Number one, we had, how many principal leads did we have?
I'm not mistaken, we had 6 individuals.
We had 6 principal leads and we had how many ISPs?
I'm not mistaken, 5.
Okay, so we had about 11 people that we have reduced and taken away that position. So now we're saying in place of those 11, at some point, we need 2 people to help supervise all of the things that we have to do out there in the schools. So we've reduced it greatly. And even though, let me finish, please, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to give you data. We have gone from 11 people in a reduction, 11, and we can't, the central office has to have people to do the work. Now, one other thing I want to remind you of, I sent you this today because it dawned on me that last year when I came in as interim, we were asked by Dr. Richardson to reduce the central office by $1.2 million. So we've already done that. We've already done that. And just because it just dawned on me today, I asked for this and that's why I sent it out to you. So in addition to what we reduced during the reduction in force, we've already reduced the central office by 1.199703, which is right at 1.2 million.
Okay. All
So
right.
we've done some reductions. So we've gone here on this chart from about 11 people, and we're saying, even though we have it vacant now, that we need some people to help run this organization of almost 28,000 plus children and 4,000 employees, give or take a few. here
One
and
more
there.
question and then I'll back up.
Okay.
Because you used data and you said we have reduced the positions. I studied the charts. I have all the charts here from your interim charts to your other charts. We had 35 positions, okay, based on the intervention. Then based on the organizational chart, we had 40 positions. And the positions that you've given us right now, based on what you've given us, there's 54. So if you did the numbers, we went from 35, 40 to now 54. So I have a real problem with who's doing the math here. I'm not a math teacher, but
So we're reducing
stop
money. We're reducing money.
not at 104, because if you move a principal lead, or if who we've already heard's going into these positions, okay, they'd be going from 110 to 104, so they took a $6,000 reduction. I'm not following this. We know, many people on this board know exactly who's going in those positions. We can't use names up here, but I'm not a psychic, but know who's going in them.
Okay. So, anybody who has been in any position has a right to apply for another position. Now.
But why apply when you know
okay.
who's getting it?
Let me finish, please. Under Students First, before it became Students First, where you can only have tenure as a classroom teacher, you could have had tenure as a deputy superintendent, an associate superintendent, a principal. You could have had tenure in all of those positions. Under Students First, now the only place that you can have tenure is as a teacher. So before Students First, in a reduction, we could have transferred a person laterally into another position, and to which they would still have tenure. That is no longer the case. So we can't tell people that because we're sending them under Students First to be a classroom teacher, because that's the only place you now can get tenure, that they can apply for and be considered for a job because they do have the experience. You know, when I left being a superintendent, I had tenure as a deputy. So I could have remained where I was as a deputy if that was what I chose to do, or they could have put me in a classroom and let me teach, but they would have had to pay me at the deputy level. That's how it used to work. It doesn't work that way anymore. So we have to, when we're looking at all these changes, we have to look at everything under the law and how it works in order to be fair to people. But we still cannot, understanding the history of all of how this has all happened over the years, we cannot eliminate someone from being considered for a position and looking at their experience and whatever else they might have that would enable them to do a good job.
Dr. Moore, looking at your plan here that you have, personnel, you have two people on here that fit the category of tenure in a principal slot. It's two on that I know, I've been on the board long enough to know that these people, but yet you have them being transferred to elementary school. But somebody knew when they did this list that those people were not going in the classroom. They were grandfathered too, that you have on this personnel report. So I don't understand why you would even put that they are going to a primary school or middle school and all of that when you know they are tenured as a principal. They should have been given the opportunity to interview for a principalship or place there or whatever, but to just, I mean, this looked to me like a holding pattern.
Okay, may I try to respond to that?
Sure.
And I understand because I've done this as well a long time. And so I understand where you're coming from, but the changes have occurred under Students First. The only place that we can move them now, we can't transfer them into anything except a place where they have tenure, which is only under Students First in a classroom position. A teacher can gain tenure. Nobody else can gain tenure. Principals are on contracts, so I can't transfer you into a contracted position. I can't do that under the law. Back in the day, you could do it that way. It can't be done that way anymore. We have several principalships open. Anybody who wants to apply who qualifies, including some of the people that we're not naming, they may apply for a principalship. But they would then have to be put on a contract. They could not be transferred. It doesn't happen automatically like that anymore.
But what I'm saying, Dr. Moore, is I know that there are principals that do, and I'm just using these two names, but Liz Hill, you can't put her back in the classroom because these people were tenured
We can answer about Liz Hill. There are some people who are still on the, go ahead.
Well, you just said you go back to your last tenured position. Six.
But once they leave it, they don't have it anymore. You can only have it as a teacher under Students First. So everybody, I'm thinking that these people we're talking about, because they were principals who were never on a contract, they still maintain tenure in the position of a principal. Once they leave it, they no longer have tenure as a principal. They only can have tenure as a teacher in this system. If they got tenure in this system as a teacher. If they got it somewhere else, they don't have it even as a teacher in this system. So it gets a little bit more complicated than it used to be. It used to be kind of lateral. You could move people around under Students First. That doesn't happen. Those people who never left the principalship but got tenure as a principal have it as long as they stay as a principal. Once they come off, and some people were given the opportunity to get on a contract, maybe they could make a little more money or whatever, but most people who were tenured as principals and they're staying as principals, that's what they are. Once they leave it, if they become a superintendent somewhere in, say, Montgomery, they can't go back to being a principal anymore because they don't have that tenure anymore. They only have tenure as a classroom teacher. It just changed. The whole thing changed. Am I right? Thank you.
You have a question?
One other question, about a few of the vacant positions.
Yes, ma'am.
The executive directors, the not that one, but I guess the executive director positions is where my question's coming from. What funding source will those particular, jobs?
Could I please get
positions come
quiet in
from?
the gallery? I'm sorry.
But what would be the funding source? Will they be title, would it come from Title I, or is it coming from our general fund?
You want to answer that, Kim, or do you want me to? Right.
Shouldn't
So-
it directly impact the students?
I would think so, but of course, we also have some schools that are Title I, some schools that are not Title I. So it also depends on that as well. So they're providing services to the Title I schools and the non-Title I schools, because then a certain portion may be, but
And-
not all of them. So
And the other would have to come out of general.
Right.
It would have to match the funds.
Right. We could split it so that, for instance, if we said part of it's, we want to pay one full salary out of Title I and one out of general, we could split it half and half so that those people could work with everybody. So if they're elementary or middle or high, they could work with a high school or middle school that's not Title I or one that is, because you split their salary with federal and with general. And that way you can kind of get more bang for your bucks in a way. And that is just a creative way of trying to do it so that you're not tapping as much into the general fund if you can help it.
And one other question, I guess, is going back to something Ms. Gillis hit on. The positions that will be, when they're filled, the executive director positions, I noticed that you said they can come from anywhere. They could be principals, they could be teachers, whomever. And she said she didn't have executive experience. So do we have anyone in our district now with the experience? Is that going to be a requirement that they have it, or will that not be, if that's not overstepping my boundaries?
Yes, okay, so it would be based on the job description for that particular position. And so I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know if it says 3 years of experience as a whatever. But that job description is advertised, and then people who qualify get to apply, and then they get interviewed, and then they are selected for whatever the position is. Any of these in orange. For instance, you got a math specialist down there that's vacant. The lady that was in that position retired, and so that space we've left that open. We've saved some money over the last 6-7 months because we didn't replace that person. So if you look at this and you just think about what's on the chart, and then you miss the inner workings of what we've done over the past whatever number of months, we actually have even saved some money because we didn't replace that person. That's just one example. But when we advertise for that math specialist, then that job ad will state all the qualifiers, and then anyone who meets that requirement can apply for that job. And they can be inside of the system, they can be outside of the system. It could be a classroom teacher who's certified unless it requires administrative certification. I don't know what it requires because I don't have it in front of me. But whatever the characteristics are that are required in the job ad, then those are the people who qualify.
So Dr. Moore, let
Yes,
me clarify this. You are saying you need a educational specialist, but you can't give us a job description of what they'll be doing? I mean, what is it that you want
We can
done?
go pull one. I just said I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you.
But could you give me
all-
like kind of just, I mean, I know, but
I don't do that on a daily basis, but they might be able to do that over there.
but you're the one recommending it. I would like to hear it from
but
you.
you understand that I have these people who do jobs. I can't do everybody's job. I can only
But
do
you're
mine.
recommending that you need it. I would just think why you would know here why
I
you
can tell
need
you why
it.
I think we need it. We need it because we have issues in math and reading in our school system.
And that's why you've got something down here for math times 2. In fact, you've also got this posted. Even though you have one position, 1 square for a math ed specialist, you are posting a position for 2. So what's the deal there?
Well,
And let me add
okay.
this: you had 10 educational specialists from the last organizational chart. Now you have 18.
Okay.
I'm confused.
Okay, let me unconfuse you if I can.
Please.
On an org chart, you don't necessarily put how many people. You just put the position. That's typically what you do. So, in a system with 28, 29, 30,000 kids, ranging from kindergarten through 12th grade, it would be great to have someone who knows a lot about how to teach elementary math. So you might have a person who works with elementary math in order to help the teachers out in the schools. You might have a secondary person who is more certified to teach secondary math, algebra, calculus, etc., etc. An elementary person doesn't necessarily have that skill set. So you might have 2 people in math in a system this size. In a small rural system with 1,500 kids, you might not have one at all. You might have 1/2 of one to do it. So you have to look at your situation. And when you start playing numbers games, those numbers are a part of how many kids you have in your system and how many teachers you have at a certain level. And can one specialist in math actually do a wonderful job of helping all of the teachers, K-12, do a great job in math? And do you have a performance issue with your students in math? Yes, we do. So how can we expect one person to do a really super bang-up job of helping all of our teachers at whatever level be great math teachers? Because elementary teachers learn how to teach everything, but we need to focus on the skills that a teacher needs to be able to be a good math teacher in elementary. And so you might have a specialist who can come in and help them with that.
Okay, and so what you're basically saying is you as superintendent are basing your recommendation for these ed specialists on what Miss Gillis says.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying as superintendent, I use my expertise and what I know about teaching and learning to
And
help
that's why
decide.
I asked you the question to give me the job description
Right,
and not
to
her.
help decide. The description is a mechanical kind of thing. It's a paper and pencil thing that's written out. I'm telling you why we need more than one math person if we can do it.
I think
That's why.
Lisa, I think what you're saying, we have this org chart.
Yes, ma'am.
But on the chart, on the vacancy, you just have one person. And the same thing with the ed specialist. I think she is saying that you should have had plus times 2 like
you did on the other ones.
ed specialist.
Because these posts that you have say times 2, and that's not reflected on this org chart. Yet you have said times 2 in the middle twice, and you didn't even say what their educational specialist in. You just said educational specialist times 2 under the associate superintendent, and then you said it again under the associate superintendent, HR staff, and the other one was student services.
Okay.
So it's vague.
Ms. Gillis.
No, those are, it's at the top.
There's the vacancy in counseling. Yeah. No, that would be under the chief academic officer.
Right, that's the ones that I'm talking about. I want to explain those first.
Okay.
I want to start there because we received some grant, if I'm not mistaken, with regards to the time that the CSI grant, that comprehensive school moving grant, and from time to time we get those. So instead of having to change the work chart every time we get money to say that we use that fund.
So is that where our face and communications person is going? Because we have already heard that Camille Finley be going there. We've used names already.
See, these
Well, but we
rumors that
did.
you're hearing
Okay.
without,
But if I'm right, then again, I'm psychic number 3. But if I'm right, we get to go. Okay. Right again.
If that's the case then, and we need 2 math specialists, should this not say ×2?
I mean, we can make it, that's why we're talking about it, we can make it say ×2 if that's what we plan to hire, but we may only hire one, depending on the funding. I would suggest that, in the perfect world, we need someone who understands elementary and someone who understands secondary.
Well, they're advertising for 2. I don't think you know that they're advertising for 2. They're advertising for 2. You dropped the educational specialist reading, did you know that? That's not on here. Nope, it's not on here. You dropped the early, these are the ones you dropped. I made a list of them. Okay? You have dropped early, I think it was early education, or so it is, let me find it. I thought that was English. Well, then you had ELA and reading the last time, so why not have it this time? I'm just going through the boxes, telling you what boxes are there and not there. I've studied this and ready for y'all today.
Can we have the gallery please be quiet?
Okay, the 2 that I have now is you put in you added a special, so you added something on energy, and then you took away special. You took away the ed specialist in elementary, and also in reading. But can we have 98% of our kids aren't reading? A proficiency, if you look at it, why would we get rid of a reading specialist? Who's the powers that be? Yeah. Okay. All right. Whatever. I don't. I wouldn't ask.
I think part of what we're dealing with here is we're trying to take the old org chart and fit it into what we're suggesting as a new org chart. So the old one, although right now we're operating under whatever, we also were operating when advanced ed came in under one that had lots of State Department stuff on it, which didn't fly, by the way. So the one before that, whenever it was done, in 2000, whenever, that's not what we've been trying to operate under. We've been trying to operate under one that the State Department under intervention put together. Advanced ed, of course, did have a little bit of a problem with that one because that didn't fit either. So now we're trying to orchestrate something that works for where we are now. It's very difficult if we start trying to make the new one look like the old one, because then there would be no need to give you something new. We're trying to make it work money-wise, but also grant-wise. Also, what do we need to help our students perform at a higher level with the number of kids that we
And I
have?
think the answer to that is teachers, and that's my problem with this. If you guys meant, if this personnel report that you've given us today, and you've sent you know, if I open this up and you send if you really do what's on this paper, hey, I'll get up and do y'all a dance. Y'all will probably die laughing, but I would love to see y'all do this. But I know you're not. I can pick out these and know good and well, and there's other people on here that know. There's nobody that you're taking from a $110,000 job and send them down to a 61 when they're so close to retirement. They would not do that to their retirement.
They might not take it if that's where they are, but they have the right to apply like anybody else out there in the, how many ever
And that'd be fine if I didn't know
folks
how
in there.
MPS worked. I know that you are putting these people in those positions, and everybody else knows because they've already been asked. Whether you know they've been asked, and I doubt you know, they have been asked. They know where they're going. They know they're not really going into the classroom. So what I'm saying is, don't tell me they're going into the classroom when we know who and where and who's hiring them.
Okay.
Do I know more than you? Because I
You
can
might.
tell you, I shouldn't.
But I'm not guaranteeing you that you do, but I'm saying you might. Because I think a lot of
You can
what
at
we're
least
dealing
admit I
with,
might.
I think what we're dealing with is not looking at the possibility that anybody on that report, that personnel report, where you have people that we are just hiring new in a teaching position could at some point apply for anything on this org chart. And so we can't take a group of people and tell them they can't apply for something that's on the org chart.
But let me tell you what it looks like, and I promise I'm gonna try this to be my last statement. Let somebody else, clean house. What I'm trying to say here, okay, is I ask you from the get-go, from the day of the RIF. If you look at it, okay, it's a process, and I think somebody's told other people, hey, it's a process. One, we're going to do the RIF. Two, we're going to tell you we're doing this. Two, then we're going to put you, today's step 2, by the way, we're going to put you right back into the classroom. Step 3 is you're going to reapply for those new old positions that are lateral moves, basically. And step 4 is what I'm trying to do, shut the door on it, okay? Now, what I'm saying here is, why would you advertise these positions? Why would you even put them on an org chart if you were trying to save money? I heard this up to this yesterday. The orange spots were supposedly wish spots. Okay, well, I found out in the last 12 hours, those wish spots weren't wish spots. Those were spots that need to be filled. Okay, then I found this out, okay, is if y'all's plan A of us accepting this org chart didn't work, then we were going into Title I funds, which I ask you at every meeting, did we even touch Title I funds in the RIF? And the answer to me on YouTube and in front of everybody was no. But yet we just asked about the Title I funds, and it was like, well, it depends on who's getting the job and what their degree is. And you know what? We can dance all around on this,
all right,
okay?
Lisa.
And it's sort of like the car salesman that's going to sell you a car and says, I'm going to take off $5,000. We know the price anyway.
All right, Lisa, let's,
I'm sorry. I told you that was my last.
all right, but
Show.
all right, and I'm
Columbo.
going to say what I say about org charts. You have to have one in order to run an organization. It may not be perfect, and there may be some adjustments that need making to it, but it's your guide for how to run an organization. And the jobs that are out there, if we need these orange jobs filled to run this, then we need them. Now, if you've talked about people taking a pay cut, a big one, and not taking that because of retirement, that's their choice to take or not take a job that put them into.
Define big. What's your big cut? I'm seeing 6,000. You think 30 to 40.
I'm looking
Good.
at what's on this. I'm combining what's on that with what's on this personnel
And I
minutes.
just told you what's on paper is not true.
Well,
That's okay.
it's true for the moment. They can apply for another job,
Yeah, you
and
got
they
that
may or
one.
may not get it. And if you were if you were looking at retirement, would you want to look at a job that was 6,000 less than what you're doing? If it
I'd
indeed,
take 6 over 30 or 40,
well, again, it's their choice. It's the individual's choice what to do. The question I think really is, do you have any other suggestions for amending this chart,
Oh, yeah.
because these are things that need to be.
Don't get me started, yeah. We can
What
start
do
with
you-
supervisor, we can start with bringing in retired teachers, we can start with all sorts of things that would save this money. We can start with taking off these positions that weren't here, you know, like 3 years ago. Now we're putting them back. All you're doing is a shift, and that's exactly what it is.
But the positions are needed to run the district. What, it just doesn't, the name change doesn't mean we don't need them. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. May I say one last thing?
done.
May I say one?
I'm done, I've
one
said my piece.
60-second thing. So we've been under intervention, and we know under intervention, lots of titles and things got changed, people got added, jobs, people got increases in their salary. So lots of things happen. We're trying to get it back to something that makes sense for MPS. If I were in another system, it might look entirely different. You might only have 2 or 3 blocks on there because it's small and doesn't need all that. Now, in answering the question about the reduction, at some point, we need to look at a net reduction. How much money are we saving across the board in what we've done? The net reduction. And it doesn't matter a whole lot about how all that happened, but if your net reduction is the $12 million that Mr. Watts says that we need, and we can show you across the board, forget the org chart, forget who's wherever. If we can show you a net reduction in our general fund of $12 million, then we have accomplished the goal that we were supposed to accomplish.
Dr. Moore,
That
I
is
sent
the-
you a
that's
letter.
where we're trying to get.
I
to the
sent you a
net.
letter 3 weeks ago asking you, and Erica reminded me, I asked you for a net, budget before we went into the RIF and after. You told me
We're not there
in
yet.
writing in 3 weeks, you let me know. It's been 3 weeks.
No, ma'am. You and I are meeting after this meeting, if you recall. And I have your email in front of me where I've highlighted certain things in order to give you some answers. But the net is not going to show up yet as an accurate number because we still have all of these personnel issues that we deal with over the summer. The reductions, the people who are leaving that we're not going to replace, some people we will have to replace, the grant money that we have, all of those things. But at some point, we will be able to give you a net reduction number that shows you that our goal, as Mr. Watts asked us to try to match, was $12 million. When we were asked by Dr. Richardson to do 1.2 million, we did 1.199703. And those people have not been replaced.
Okay,
So
and-
you can have the figures, but it's not something that just happens today. Boom, you do it, boom, it's there. That's not how that works.
Okay, I went, like I said, I was ready for this today, if you can't
Okay,
tell.
good, I'm
Okay,
ready to.
I took all of the stuff you've given us. I took all your retirement teachers, all your resigned teachers, and I took that as attrition. I multiplied that. I took your number, even though I know teachers only make 70. You explained to me about insurance and stuff. I took them at 70,000.
Okay.
You had, okay, if you take your retirement teachers, you had 11. Resigned teachers, you had 22. You add that up, that's 2,310,000. Then you take all your non-renewals. I took your non-renewals since we did this projected thing. That would be 32 times, and I used your number 70. That would be 2,240,000, a total of 4,550,000. Okay, so with that being stated, that's nowhere near the 12,818,200.
Okay, so you're
Yes,
going
I've done
back,
my homework.
you're only going back a couple of board reports with
I
personnel.
went back to your projected date.
Okay,
That's a good question. Are we going to go back to March or what?
some people have left and did not get replaced. Yeah, they might go back to March, they might, as in on this chart, go back to September, October. When we give you the net, it's gonna take into consideration where we were and where we are now. After we get through all of the summer, lots of people don't resign or retire until the end of the summer. They don't even tell us that they're leaving until the very last minute. All of those numbers will be counted into this, and we will give you a net of savings from where we were, let's say when Mr. Watts came in, to the point that we give you those numbers. And he's asked us to try to get that $12 million. And when we give you that net, we should be at 12 million or maybe over a little bit. We might be over a little bit, but we're gonna look at all the numbers. We're gonna look at our state allocations. And so if a school has 15 local units we may reduce them by a number of units to get them closer to their state allocation, because those are people that we have to pay for. So it is not all of a sudden you just get that number. You have to work that thing for a number of months before you can come up with your net. But he wants us to get a net of 12 million in order to balance our budget. So that's where we're trying to get to. And it can't be done like boom, like that. It's over time, watching all the numbers and watching people as they come and go and deciding whether or not this is a position we refill or we don't. And then at some point, we can give you a good idea, a good net. Net is what we're looking for over time.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'd like to know when you all have the private meetings that more of us would be included. Did you not have a meeting yesterday? Yes. So if we could all work together instead of divide and conquer, maybe we could get some things done. I have pictures of.
Well, now, Mary, I have to say this, okay? Any meetings, now I'm not trying to jump on your parade,
I'm not
though.
talking about you. I didn't hear, were you at the, I didn't hear anything about you, but I have
Okay,
pictures of
you know-
stuff, so you just stay quiet.
Okay, all I'm saying is
Stay
they can.
quiet.
Okay, I'll respect that.
So I just wanna know if you all are having meetings without the rest of us. I mean, if we are going to be a board and there's 7 of us, when you and when the president and the vice president get together and call people in for meetings, yes, you had a meeting yesterday and I got pictures to prove. So now let's be fair. Now, I don't know whether it's part of, on the superintendent's part or who on the president's part or whatever. If we are going to do the right thing by our students, by our employees, then we need to be on the same board. I don't like the parking lot meetings.
Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Well, you never denied that you had a meeting yesterday. You had a meeting.
I have meetings all day, every day.
But you had a meeting with board members. So if we're gonna have meetings, let's have meetings with everybody.
Do you want to go with us to the State House when we have a meeting sometime?
You and Claudia all over the city, but you can't make any demands on us as a board because you have to have at least 4 people.
There
So
were
just
not,
think
there,
about all
there,
that
there
when
were
you
not
have
4
all these
people.
meetings.
Any meeting is not a meeting without 4 people. And, is there any more
But to
discussion?
force people to
Are
vote
there-
up or down on things, that's
No,
not their
ma'am.
job.
No, ma'am. I don't ask anybody to vote for anything other than their own conscience. And if I'm meeting with you, it's because I want to learn
I know a couple of
something.
people who were there,
Madam
but-
Chairman, let's go with the next item on the agenda.
and this is
Thank
the
you.
MPS board meeting.
Let's go next item on the agenda.
Are there any other
We don't
questions?
need an Uncle Tom.
Are there any other questions on this organizational chart? If not, we're going to move on to the personnel.
Like we are sure, and I don't like that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a couple of items on here for personnel, so let me back up, because I recommend approval of the personnel report certified.
Is there a motion on the certified personnel?
To ask questions, do we wait?
We have to have a
After it gets on the
motion.
floor for discussion, that's when you ask.
Is there a motion?
Madam President, I motion that we accept the thank you. I move that we accept the certified personnel.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
A lot has been discussed relative to this particular form, but the one that I'm most interested in, and I have done some talk, and I think we're going to be somewhat pleased, but there's a lot of unrest about what's going on at Baldwin with that teacher moving. I am not into names. It does not matter to me who has a certain position, but I would like to go on record as acknowledging the significance of us maintaining that program at Baldwin. I have no problem with us moving a teacher, a qualified instructor, to the Carver program,
because that program does need a good, solid music program. I'm excited about that. But in order for us to maintain a reputable and a positive and a growing program at BTW, and for those students from Carver to have somewhere to matriculate to, I think it's vital that we have a good, strong music and strings program at Baldwin Arts.
Yes, ma'am. So may I make a comment before you vote? So I work with HR, and there's a term we use that's flex, a teacher unit that we can flex, that is not needed necessarily at one school where it might have been earned because the number of students might have dropped. And so we're trying to work with Baldwin and with BTW on that unit that we can flex in order to maintain their string program. So we're going to try to work that out. It's just a matter of getting it worked out.
Okay, well, thank you.
Are we gonna flex some things that are going on in the traditional school as well?
Well, we only, let me clear this up now.
Okay,
We don't.
just when we start flexing, I wanna know.
Okay, so the flex is something we've earned from the State Department. It is a unit. And so we only probably have maybe one that we can flex to accommodate a string program. And so that is why we're gonna try to work to flex that one for music in this case. In the traditional schools, one school, perhaps, I'll give you an example, has $600,000 that they can use. We also use our Teacher Reduction Act units, that if we have a school that has a class that's overloaded, needs smaller class sizes, we earn money for that. And so we have various ways that we can use our money that I don't call a flex teacher, but we can use that money to cover some other things. So there are some avenues available where we will not have overcrowded classrooms and that kind of thing.
And we are working on, other lowering taxes, but people don't seem to be bothered by it unless it's happening to you or your child. So maybe these people with the strings want to be at Baldwin and Booker T. Washington and all of that. Why don't they get out there when it does not affect them and help? We have strings, there are some traditional schools that don't have textbooks. So, I mean, let's just lay it all out there and show them what it is that we need. Because I've been inundated with people talking about strings, and I'm talking about money, period.
I certainly do understand what you're saying. And I'm trying to figure out in my, my second year started June 1, by the way, on my contract. So there are a lot of things we got to fix. And so I'm trying to find creative ways to do that under the rules and regulations that we have to live under or within. So I'm trying every year just to figure it out. And there are a lot of questions, and I know it causes a lot of headaches, but I'm trying to do it in a fair-minded way and make sure that we follow the law and the rules and be as creative as we can be with the monies that we get. And it may be a little different from what we're used to in some cases. Not you, ma'am, because you've been around a while, so you know how that goes. But trying to be as creative as we can be, and it is, and sometimes in some ways, going to be a little bit different, but it's perfectly legal and it's perfectly legit. And then, but trying to take care of everybody. I mean, even with the textbooks, we've talked about ways that maybe Title I money can be used to fill in some of the places where we have a lack of textbooks. So there are other ways to look at some of the money that we get, but keep it in mind, we also need to do a better job with our millage rate. That does need to be increased.
And before we end the discussion on this, I asked Mr. Watson, he gave you a copy as well,
Yes,
about, and I left one name off about the people that were non-tenured. I could feel better about the whole situation if we started out being fair. Because if you have people who have worked in this system 25 or 20 years or whatever, and then you have someone who has come in on the high salary scale, and the others are put back with the tenure, put back in the classroom, and these people come, they haven't been here a year, and they are making these, the one that I left off, the ones that I did have, that's a $500,000 saving there. I mean, it's not like they're rocket scientists that they have to have these particular positions, because we have qualified people within our system. And I think that we are really lowering the morale of our staff in this system because they are not being treated fairly, in my opinion. And like you said, I've been around for a while. But this is the first time that I have seen that we have so many non-tenured personnel with jobs that other people can do, and a couple of them which they don't even need the person that you know put there. But that's, you're the superintendent, and at the end of the day, you have your votes. I know that, so I still want to go on record of saying what I needed to say.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I know you didn't take it that way, because I really do appreciate the fact that you and I both have been around a while.
Right.
So I do appreciate that, and so in many of those positions, we only have one person in it, and in many of those positions, they were hired, just like, once they get hired, they're hired, and so the same
But they don't have
regulations
tenure
pass.
anymore.
I know, but
And you have people that have tenure that's being demoted, and you bring in
To
people
teacher
in that
jobs.
We really got people within our system that can do that. You know, I just don't see.
Some of them that are even more qualified.
That's true. You have some that's not even certified to do what they're doing, what, two?
Yeah.
But, you know, that's it. I just had to say my say, Mr. Roller. But you got your votes, and I know that, so I'm not bothered by that, but I just wanted to let you know, and your vote getters, how I feel about this situation, that's all. And I've always been that way, you know, what comes up, comes out, and I just feel like it needed to be said.
Well, and I want to add this. I agree with I totally agree with what Mary said on these non-tenured personnel that are making those 6-digit figures. I want to thank you for the strings. I think, and I know the parents can't hear me. They're probably not here, but there are parents out there on that community board that have spoken and come up and written letters, and it shows you that people are looking at the community board and also paying attention to the news. I just heard this today, and I did not know that this was on the personnel report, that there were 2 BTW teachers that we are pulling. If you'll remember, I wrote you a letter at the very beginning of the year, of the last year, that we were missing a dance teacher, and you said you'd help me. And now I hear is we're pulling 2 more teachers, and you know that's critical. That's why we have these magnets. Is for things like strings and things like that. I also agree with Mary that we in the traditional schools, there are things that we need to look at where I think a lot of these non-rodeo teachers, in my opinion, are still going back like they always have. But we've got to put the qualified teachers there and make sure that we're not, you know, you take it what happened at Goodwin this year. Those 8th graders, almost a full class of 8th graders, did not have a math teacher almost an entire year.
Right.
And according to another person on the board, it was not just 8th graders, it was 6th graders.
All right.
So we're spending money on the central office and still top heavy, it needs to be spent on teachers in the classroom, qualified.
okay,
What's on our agenda right now is we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on the personnel minutes?
More like a comment, and I will agree. I know that majority of the board asked for a work session so that we could kind of air some of this out and get a better understanding. I heard you mention we're gonna let you all know what the bottom line is after we do everything, but I think just being in good order and good practice, that we should kind of be brought in before and not on the rears, so that the questions that we need asked can be asked, the information we need can be provided. So I just, you know, I was a little disappointed when we emailed our board president and majority of us asked for the work session and we were not granted it. But I think in all fairness, if majority of the board asked, then I would think that it would just be in good order
Well,
to do the work session.
a work session was requested. There's a work session now. There's a work session next week too. Do you want yet another one?
Well, it was recommended to substitute it or to do it before the meeting.
To do
A
another
work session.
on-
This is a special call meeting, and they're
Right.
2 different things. This is a special call.
But it
and
is a work session.
No, a work session is different. work session.
Okay, so I think at some point, we need to, not today, because we have something on the plate to be voted on, but I think at some point, we need to have, maybe define what happens in a work session, so that we're all on the same page about what happens in a work session. So, typically, we present information and we ask questions and we try to clarify in a work session. And then, so that when it's time to vote, then you have hopefully had as
That's
much
my point.
clarified
That was
as
my
possible. So I think we need to, spend some time perhaps defining what we all see as a work session and
Well,
technically
you just-
what that is.
You just basically made the point that I just made,
Okay.
what the work session would be, what it's all about.
Okay, so, but right now, we're deviating.
We are.
From-
This was a work session on the org chart. And
Well, it was just for information. It was just presented as information. We're not,
a work session is where we can discuss and go through things, which we have today.
No, but see, the time before this, we have been asked to vote on something we have not had any input. But you'll do better when you know that.
okay, so,
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome, Bob.
All right. All those in favor of approving the certified personnel minutes, please signify by raising their hands. All of those opposed, please raise your hands. You have a tie.
so it's the tie. So it fails at this point for lack of a
Okay. All right,
majority.
so would you make a motion on the
Okay.
support?
I recommend that we approve the personnel report, classified personnel.
And is there a motion for that?
Madam President, I move that we approve the support personnel minutes.
Is there a second? Is there a discussion? All of those in favor of approving the support personnel minutes, please signify by showing a show of hands. And opposed? Okay, that passes. Our next work session will be next Tuesday, June 11th, here at 5 o'clock.